Science editor Steve Newman reports on one person already using the brand new system.
17 stories up in his fashionable North Beach apartment, Richard Howard is calling a local number that will connect him with a computer in Columbus, Ohio. Meanwhile, across town, in this less than fashionable cubbyhole of the San Francisco Examiner, these editors are programming today's copy of the paper into that same Ohio computer. When the telephone connection between these two terminals is made, the newest form of electronic journalism lights up Mr. Howard's television with just about everything the Examiner prints in its regular edition. That is, with the exception of pictures, ads, and comics. 8 newspapers around the country are currently in the computer network, and within the next few weeks, 3 others will join in.
This is an experiment. We're trying to figure out what it's going to mean to us as editors and reporters, and what it means to the home user. And we're not in it to make money. We're probably not going to lose a lot, but we aren't going to make much either.
Both Examiner and Chronicle began service within the last 2 weeks and printed full-page ads about it. Of the estimated 2,000 to 3,000 home computer owners in the Bay Area, the Chronicle reports over 500 have responded by sending back coupons. Even though the electronic newspaper isn't as spiffy looking as the ads imply, people using the system are excited about its potential.
With this system, we have the option not only of seeing the newspaper on the screen, but also optionally we can copy it. So anything we're interested in, we could go back in again and copy it onto paper and save it, which I think is the future of the type of interrogation an individual will give to the newspapers.
This is only the first step in newspapers by computer. Engineers now predict the day will come when we get all our newspapers and magazines by home computer, but that's a few years off. So for the moment at least, this fellow isn't worried about being out of a job. Steve Newman, News Center 4.
Well, it takes over 2 hours to receive the entire text of the newspaper over the phone, and with an hourly use charge of $5, the new telepaper won't be much competition for the 20-cent street edition.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Economist Business Affairs editor, Tom Standage.
Isn't that clip fantastic? I take 2 things away from that. The first is when you see something new and technological and you laugh at it, you go, that's never going to catch on. Remember that clip. But the other one was that the journalists were saying, well, we're not going to charge for this. We're not expecting to make much money from this. And obviously that hasn't changed at all. Anyway, here are some covers of The Economist. This is just one of the many new things we are trying at this conference. We have this rather snazzy AV setup. We have this voting system. There are lots of things we're trying. And here's an additional quiz for you, as well as testing your knowledge of the contents of this week's Economist. Both of those questions, incidentally, the answers came from the front half of The Economist, and my job is to edit the back half of The Economist, but I'm not going to take it personally. One of these covers up here is not a cover that was actually a genuine cover, and you have to guess which one it was. But I have to tell you that this particular cover, there it goes across the middle now, it circulated a great deal on the internet last year, and there was 1 week in September when we did seriously consider whether we should run it, because it would have been, it was quite appropriate, but also it would have shown that we were alive to the fact that there was a conversation about The Economist and what it should be saying, perhaps already going on online, and of course that's a reality that we all face these days. Okay, so this event is about media convergence. Convergence is one of those subjects where if you ask 5 people for a definition, you get 6 answers. And so I thought it might be useful to say exactly what we're looking at the convergence of, and it's the convergence of media, technology, and marketing. Technology allows you to measure the effectiveness of marketing in ways that wasn't possible before, and of course technology is also creating new kinds of media that can be used for marketing, and that provides challenges and opportunities for marketers now. And social media is obviously a very big part of this, and the social proliferation of this fictitious Economist cover is the example that's very close to home for us. But there are others as well. I mean, even though we're a 166-year-old magazine, we have a presence on Facebook. We're using Twitter. We're investigating this like everyone else, and we don't claim to have all the answers. But we are looking forward to hearing what people who are right on top of this at the moment have to say about this over the next couple of days, and hearing the perspective of different people in different parts of the industry. One of the things, of course, when people are talking about you online, you're meant to keep track of this and see what people are saying. And so I actually Googled this event to see what people were saying about this event. And my favourite result came from a website which is called Upcoming New World Order Related Conferences. And it's a bunch of people who are very worried about the impending New World Order takeover. Or has it already happened? I'm not quite sure where those people are coming from. But anyway, they list the entire agenda of this conference, and underneath it says, besides what is above, I think this conference will be about making money in the New World Order, increased traffic and databasing, brainwashing in the media, mass control, restrictions on the internet, and the eventual shutdown of the internet as we know it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't get the memo that said that, so that's not what we're going to talk about. Instead, we're going to be talking about these new things, the new challenges they throw up. Yes, some of it is controversial, and some of it is still being figured out. But there is this whole question, to what extent can you turn marketing into a science? If you do use these new means of tracking and evaluating marketing, is that squeezing out creativity? I was talking to somebody in the industry yesterday who was very worried about this, that when you suggest something new, it gets focus tested to death, and if it doesn't pass the focus groups, then it doesn't happen. And of course, the iPod would have never have happened if it had been focus tested. Then there's the whole question around things like behavioural targeting and privacy, and to what extent can you trade off privacy for access and for the ability to do things online without paying. And that's a very live debate. And in fact, we're going to have a debate, we're going to have an Oxford-style debate about that tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to. Anyway, so I think there's a great deal to talk about, and we've got a really fantastic lineup, and we'd like to make this as interactive as possible, not just with the voting, but also to encourage your interaction from the another nice video spot for you. So I hope you enjoy the show and enjoy the next day and a half. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining. Look forward to getting started with the first panel. Wanted to say thank you to the folks joining us on Naked Media, who are at the web, watching us live on web TV, and this panel will be available later on nakedmedia.org, which is our media business show, as well as many other episodes of it. What we're going to do first, before we tackle the large topic of the future of media, is show a video some of you may have seen about the future of media. So why don't we roll the video, and then we'll get started with the panel.
En mi web luego te dejo mi tarjeta y lo dejas la tuya también.
Try to get a question to me electronically, either from within the room or online. You can try tweeting me, and I will try to look at my iPod once in a while. My Twitter handle is @dbank, D-E-E-N-K, and I will try to do it. So we have right here, of course, folks, you probably know some or all of the people on the panel. We have Thomas Hesse of Sony Music. We have Robin Johnson of News of the FT Search product. We have Mark Hollinger of Discovery. And we have Craig Newmark of Craiglist. So, gentlemen, why don't you each let us know just briefly your perspective from your industry on what you think the future of media is.
That's a big question, the future of media. Let me say...
Or the future of the music industry.
The future of the music industry. Well, where are we today? The digitalization has obviously affected the music industry probably more than any other industry amongst the entertainment business. Because our files are a bit smaller, they can be very easily traded on the network, and we've seen a continued interest in music and a continued increase in the number of files and the total volume treated by over the last years. But we've also seen our business decline, because so much of the business is now being pirated by people copying and passing CDs to each other, and people still using on the network. So that is the challenge we're faced with, and it's a challenge that obviously was the first in line ahead of the film industry and the TV industry and many others. And I think we are coping in two ways. The main theme is to build attractive digital distribution methodologies for our content. And we've seen our digital business grow in leaps and bounds over the last few years, to the point that in the US we're now close to almost 50% digital and physical revenue, and that's different to in other parts of the world. But this is only very much the beginning. When you look at who is actually consuming that digital music that's now close to half our business, it's a small set of early adopters who are actually spending quite a bit of money on it, and we've not yet started to really bring digital music to the mass market. We haven't yet. Most people in this room probably download music on iTunes from time to time, but there is a whole slew of people who haven't yet really been in touch with digital music, and that's the challenge our industry is facing, to bring attractive digital music to the mass market and really reach all those people who are obviously passionate about music, because more than half of the population have been purchasing music on CDs in the last 6 months. So that's the challenge, and I think in order to get there, we're working with many different providers from around the world. I think there are a number of very interesting new opportunities that present themselves to us, both in terms of developing the existing model that we know from the download model that most people are familiar with, where you pay a fee to get a download. But obviously, the whole subscription environment where you pay a fee to have access to all the music, I think, stands at the beginning of a very interesting development. We see a lot of opportunity. There are ad-driven models and many other different models that will live side by side. So the future of that business is not just one model, as we used to know, one piece of plastic you get all your music on, but many different models that live side by side and a much more sophisticated environment for creating music amongst the labels that are all massively effective.
We should explore later whether there is a future for the music industry as we know it. But let's look at Craig, what's your perspective on the future of media and where it's going?
I'm speaking somewhat as an outsider regarding the media business, but one that's kind of been thrust into the discussion tonight. So in large part what I'm doing is listening to people and making the occasional observation, focusing on news media, but in general, we tend to relate to media that we trust. I've been saying that trust is the new black. And also I've been observing that when it comes to selecting media, well, depending on what part of the media industry you're talking, people help us select what we want to hear or watch or listen to. In news, they're called editors. They both edit but also provide the selection function. Music critics help us select what music we might want to listen to. Well, when I say that I'm speaking with someone who is advanced in years as I am, the deal is that this thing is called, well, now being called curation. That is, it's the curator of news, of music and media, who are helping us figure out what we might be interested in. And you know, when it comes to news, well, the kids tell me that they get their news frequently not from professionally curated sources like the Times, but from their friends on Twitter or MySpace. And frankly, I've started doing a bit of that myself on Twitter. Also, the kids get a lot of their music recommendations from, again, places like Twitter or even Facebook or things like that. A survey published days ago says that people get a lot of their news now from Twitter, and they get some of their news about trends or ongoing stuff from Facebook. So I pose questions more than anything else, thinking that right now, if you're in news, there's big opportunities to be the places which combine professional curation with that of citizens, just of our friends and peers. I don't know much about the news industry, but what the kids suggest to me is that the internet already delivers music. Tools like you can find on a Mac are how they can produce music. If the curation function is taken over by folks on their friends and maybe some of the professional music critics in balance, I don't know what role the music industry has. I want them to stay around because they have a contract with my rabbi, Leonard Cohen, and he's still around, but I don't know what the future is. So trust is the new black, skepticism about the future, and curation. I bet that Robin, as the head of NewsSIP, which is a new search engine trying to use some new tools called semantic search, which is Web 3.0. We'll get into a bit of the technology and the future of media, but I bet you have some interesting perspectives on that. First, I've been asked to mention that if you are tweeting the conference, once again, my personal handle is @dbank, D-B-E-N-K, and please, whether you're adding me or writing anything about the conference, use the hashtag media convergence. So hashtag media convergence, all one word. So, Rob, what do you think? Is curation the future of discovery? Well, first of all,
I think I'd make three quick observations. Good afternoon. And the first two actually build off of what Craig was suggesting. One of the things that happens, I think, when you think about the future that helps, is to think about basic truths. And one basic truth, I bet you most people would agree with, is there's going to be more and more content. More and more content will make it more and more difficult actually to find the content that you care about. Which content? Which songs do I want? what do I really think about the Afghan elections? You know? And so finding becomes really important. And in fact, I'm embroiled now in my third search startup, so I'm sort of like the hammer that sees everything as a nail. I do believe search is vitally important. So of the three trends I comment on, the first relates to having machines understand what's been written in text. It's called annotation. You've also heard it called entity extraction. It sounds geeky, but actually it's the very mechanism that allows you to see that this is Ford, the motor company, and that's Harrison Ford. Or, for instance, it was in some of your reading posted on the website. There was an Economist article about sentiment. Go show me, if I'm going to be buying stock, show me pros and cons about a particular company. And so annotation, again, although it sounds geeky, is actually vitally important. It will allow you to do use cases like, go show me all the high-definition digital recorders that are available at least 50% off within 10-mile drive of my home. Or go show me all the questions that have been asked of a pharmaceutical, any pharmaceutical CEO, and just show me comments that were responded to in the negative, as a negative sentiment, and cluster them by topic. Annotation allows you to do all of that. Now, I would suggest, running to the second thing, that everything can be done by machines. You all are economist readers, so by definition, you all are very smart. And so I'd like to understand what you like. And I think that the social network does some of that. I think actually you all have experienced in Amazon.com and with the Genius Bar and iTunes and a host of other retail sites, how people like you bought things like that. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen yet with the news. And I'd love to see that. We're working on that at NewsSig. The last point.
Where the news does what exactly? Where the news does what exactly?
Well, so that if I'm looking at, if I mentioned the Afghan elections, go show me people like me. Go show me interests that went beyond where I was reading the current article. Go help me with where I need to go next, which if you think about the typical search experience, it doesn't really help you with where to go next. And then in the interest of time, I think the third thing is mobile. I'm amazed by what they're cramming on a small device, and at some point, they'll make it a little bit more user-friendly for those of us north of 50, and that becomes vitally important. If you look at what's happening in particularly the Nordic countries with a cell phone, it's very sexy. You can actually use your camera to take pictures of 2D barcode, and it saves the link and plays it back to you. I think, if you all are familiar with the notion of cookies and audience identification, the cell phone, the statistic that was posted that said a third of people won't use their cell phone for purchase, that'll change dramatically. But you'll actually be using it for all kinds of things, and it'll track where you are and what you bought.
So we've got annotation, smart agents, assisted search, and sexy mobile. But you also touched on privacy, which is going to be a huge issue in media, and one that we certainly need to address. Mark, you work you basically run Discovery, which is a multi-tiered cable network of various kinds of paid programming across the world and specific types, folks have specific types. From your perspective, is the future of media that just continued paid media, or what do you think is going to happen to the realm from where you sit?
Well, it would be great for us if it did, but I think as we look at it over a number of years, and I think in the paid TV business, we have a little bit of the luxury of having been affected less by digital so far, at least, than a lot of other industries like music or even broadcast TV. You know, in a bad economy, people wouldn't turn off their paid TV subscriptions in the U.S., so that's good for us. But I think if you look at the long term, kind of the business models and how they fit with consumer behaviors, you have a traditional business model in the paid TV world that's about bundling. It's about taking. We take a bunch of programs and put it together into a network. Cable operators put a bunch of networks together into an offering for their subscribers. And people pay to get a lot of stuff that they like, hopefully, and a lot of stuff that they will never, ever look at. All the technology is moving toward an on-demand world, whether it's on my mobile device or at home on my broadband, virtually anywhere, anytime. The technology will allow on-demand all the time. Completely unbundled environment like that, There's a huge amount of logic to it from a consumer's point of view. That's a great consumer proposition. The question is there an economic model there that then allows for the creation of the content that people want to view? And so this is sort of, as we look at the long-term trends, the question will be, will there be sort of a sustainable economic model for the creation of quality content? What are people prepared to pay for quality content? One of the statistics on the video was 47% of people are willing to pay for adless video. And if that were true, then that's a different model that exists today, but one that could sustain quality content.
Well, that's a very important flashpoint right now, and divide those who are saying information content wants to be free. You, leading Discovery, have more, from my understanding, taken the position that Discovery content, at least long-form content on the Discovery networks or whatever network it is around the world, is going to be paid. You're not going to be on the Hulus of the world or the other kinds of free networks. If you want to watch an entire Discovery program and the way it was produced, you're going to have to pay, whether it's pay through iTunes or pay to watch it on Comcast through your cable provider. So why do you think that that is an appropriate way to go? And do you really think that is a sustainable business model?
Well, it may not be, but I think the filter that we have to put everything through is that we're Siamese twins with cable operators, satellite operators, telcos. And so we in essence are not as free as broadcasters or non-television content suppliers are to put things on Hulu or YouTube. We have a business model. 40% of our revenue is from subscription revenue. 70% of our revenue overseas is from subscription revenue. And so we have a big vested interest in continuing to push the value of paid television. My concern, again, for the long term is the logic of on-demand and the logic of free is going to be very, very hard to push back against. And so is there a balance in the middle that we get to where there is, again, free content at one level, paid content, whether it's through paid subscription on broadband, continued paid TV? That's the big question for us, I think, for the longer term.
And you have an answer?
Well, I think what we've said right now is that we can satisfy a need on broadband with our content in a different form. And we will use the television medium for another form. So we need to make the long form, short form distinction. I think if you really see who supports Hulu, though, it's broadcasters, it's not cable programmers.
What do you think? Paid versus free. I mean, one of the things on that video was 95% music that's downloaded is not paid for. According to the reports, Sony, which bought BMG, is now Sony and BMG combined 4 years later are about half the size of what the two music companies were when you guys joined forces. And so the trend certainly seems to be away from big music to small, disaggregated, atomized. Is that the case? And if it is the case, what is the role for a big company in the music industry or any industry? Is there a place?
Yeah, I think that was the question Craig raised as well. And I think the answer to that is that in that new world that your charts are showing on the screens here, there are still many, many different avenues for the consumer to go and look for content, whether it's Facebook, MySpace, Twitter. They continue to use radio, they continue to go to shows, they continue to buy CDs and they buy data. There's just such a plethora of channels through which the media finally gets to the consumer. And while it's sort of true that radio can put up, a website where everybody gets their music on one site, that's one instance. But they want the music in many different environments and not just that environment. And they want services around even that environment, where scale suddenly becomes again very important. If you have a big group of artists and a big catalogue that you take care of, you can provide services and you can provide them on a global level that will maximize the value of the assets that you have, so that individually artists, once they become successful, want to join that bigger entity. And that's the way it is today, and that's what I think it's going to be In fact, I think that the role of the major is much less driven by scarcity and distribution, which is what it used to be. You had to have plants and trucks that would get CDs into Walmart. That was what the role of the major was. And there was a pipe that was scarce, and the major had that pipe. I think going forward, it's the infrastructure that you as an artist can leverage in order, and that infrastructure needs to provide a service to the artist, but it's manifold. I mean, whether it's getting the best terms out of the retailers that you deal with, whether it's getting you on multiple radio stations in the entire country, whether it is sort of providing marketing services that get an artist, yes, admittedly, there's so many artists on MySpace. Who knows them? People don't. If you want to be the next Justin Timberlake, the next Alicia Keys, the next Beyonce, it requires a marketing support and a marketing machine that is synchronized around the whole world, that is sort of actually, playing all the levers of media that coexist and address consumers. And so I think,
so there's still a role for the Tommy Mottolas of the world.
Yeah, Tommy, he's around. There is a role, I think, for an aggregator of content, and in that world, I think content is very, very important. Now, content is, there's a lot of stealing going on, so that's been driving the value of the content down. I think ultimately what we're going to do is that there's going to be environments which will be so much more compelling than the virus-laden, sort of unattractive presentation which you find as some of the data beer networks, just bare bones that you get that file. I think a much richer environment in a social network that leverages the relationships that people have and in a legal way allows people to create applications around music. We're already seeing that whole app world we're seeing on iPhones is now developing, that more and more people want to create apps that leverage the music because they think there are really great things you can do around music. Music is something that's identifying who you are and you like to share that with your friends. So I think just managing that infrastructure, supporting those things with the right amount of services and the right amount of scale is really where the future of that future major company lies. It's very different from what it was.
So you think the Sony Musics and the Universals and the rest will be able to maintain the scale that they're at now, or are they going to continue to shrink?
Well, that's a different question. I think that scale matters, and I think let me just give one last point why I think scale matters. It's just the number of assets that are being generated. We used to create one album, and then we put it on a piece of plastic and then sell it. I think when you look at some of our big releases, whether it's a Beyonce or a Justin Timberlake, any of those artists, there are literally hundreds of assets that are part of that album that get disseminated. The supply chain you build around managing these assets and disseminating these assets is very substantial. So I think that's the role of the major. And our industry has declined. It's about 30–40% down from what it was. And your analogy that the two of us are now only half each of what we were isn't right, but it has declined by about 30 or 40%. So yes, I think we will continue to see a challenging environment because the CD continues to fall and digital grows, and the CD is currently falling faster than digital is growing on a worldwide scale. So we will have to shrink a bit more. But I think ultimately the thought that digital music hasn't really reached the masses makes me feel very hopeful and very optimistic about what the potential is there in exploiting it commercially going forward.
Craig, you were reacting to that visually. I don't know if you had a response. I did have another question for you.
What's the other question?
The other question is, well, first I want to read a quote. I mean, you've been blamed for, meaning you, Craiglist, have been blamed for the demise of newspapers, which Jim Brady, who was a top executive at the Washington Post, said that blaming Craiglist for the demise of newspapers is so 2002. Google is now the arch enemy that allows them to not blame themselves. He also said Craigslist is as much to blame for newspapers' woes as Chipotle is for my being overweight. So we don't have to accept. I mean, it's clear that newspapers were in a decline before Craigslist ever came along. Nevertheless, Craigslist has been a disruptor of the classified industry and has made people question business models. Did you ever dream that what you were doing was going to thrust you into such a pivotal spot where you would be taking the blame for the decline of entire media?
Now that I do hear this claim again, which is a bit of an urban legend, I just heard it a couple times at Columbia University, and the deal is to focus on what matters. Because right now our country does need a vital press asking tough questions and getting trustworthy answers. We need that to survive as a nation. And we need trustworthy news, and then we need good news curation so that we find out what's happening. For example, in 2002 or so, we had these reporters, some really good reporting being done regarding this weapons of mass destruction thing. Walter Pincus at the Post did some really good work. The news came and went in a day, wasn't repeated, and I don't think that worked out very well. Also, there was some great reporting regarding the financial crisis, and that news kind of came and went in a day. People were warning us, but that news wasn't continually on the first page, maybe the business section. That didn't seem to work out very well. So the deals we do need better media criticism, letting us know what's going on, and then telling us more. That's my big concern. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about these days. I mean, I'm not in the news business, I'm not in the music business, I'm a consumer, but I'm pointing out, hey, this kind of stuff, we need help with it. It also offers opportunities to the media outlets which do this kind of stuff. By the way, I'd like to blame this all on Jeff Jarvis, who's hovering back there somewhere. Because in New York, you have some of the best people who are talking about what's really happening with news and other media, particularly in a social media context.
So, Mark, we've alluded to the fact that distribution is a huge issue. A lot of what your business is predicated on is the ability to manage distribution across different channels and across different geographies. Is that going to be possible in the future, or a business is going to have to basically strategize on how to provide content in a non-geographic world? And if so, how are you guys thinking about this and trying to address it?
Well, from a rights point of view and a content point of view, we have a little easier time thinking about things from a global perspective than I think a lot of companies do, because our business model is basically meant to own the copyright in our programs. So wherever geographically we need to go, whatever medium we need to use, we can do that. And we have content in nonfiction that tends to travel more easily. So we sort of start from the point of view of having a global perspective already, and having a business model and kind of a rights capture model that supports that. The world of broadband is very different than the world of pay TV. Pay TV is very geographically specific, and we don't have the kind of piracy issues that the music industry does. So pay TV is fairly controlled. In the broadband world, we do start to find much more of an overspill. And again, for us, when we're in this moment, which we may not be forever, but when we're in a moment where there has to be a limitation on access in order to get people to pay, then being able to limit access geographically is an important thing. And in broadband, you can't always do that. We've had issues with programs being promoted on broadband before we premiere them. We try to control that, but it's a much less controllable environment than the pay television environment.
We'll take Q&A in just a sec, so if you do have a question, please get it ready. But I did want to ask Robin about the role of technology. We haven't talked, and that's of course a huge issue. The video talked about what's now on microchip will at some point be in a blood cell. We also have the coming of semantic web, which is basically smart agents going and finding stuff for us, so we don't have to search ourselves. Everything is discoverable in a new way, and that we will have, by some estimates, 95% of the web traffic will be automated. So perhaps things like Craigslist, if Craigslist still exists, will take on a completely different form, because you won't have to go to a Craigslist and search for your couch or your lover or your apartment. It'll just come to you. Is that going to be the new model? I mean, are we even going to have things forcefully discoverable? Are you even going to be able to put things in front of people, or is everything going to go to people in such a way that they just get stuff automatically? The intelligent, smart agents learn what they want, comes to them automatically. the concept of even a Google is completely turned on its head.
You know, you see pieces of it implemented in the market right now. You see things, Amazon's people like you bought things like this. You see elements of customization and personalization throughout the net. You'll see that trend, I think, continue. And it'll hit the music business, things like Genius Bar. It'll hit classified ads for things that are relevant only to you and your area.
It's kind of like a Yakov Smirnoff deal. Right now, we find media. What's happening, what's beginning to happen now is that media finds us. By the way, I thought that was good material. But the idea is that I think what we're going to see is a combination of smarter software plus just your friends helping you find the material they want to find. And again, I do that already in my Twitter stream. And I do that literally every day. Material finds me because people are recommending it. And then I wind up retweeting it so that the people who have some degree of trust in me wind up enjoying those fruits.
You mentioned the challenge with subscriptions. I think the news media will have to increasingly get more from the consumer. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The real challenge has just been an economic one. For most traditional print publishers moving into the online world, the value of a minute of transaction of reading is like 1/10 to 1/20 of what it would be offline. So they have to figure out a different way to make money. I think the subscriptions will be key.
Do we have any questions right now? One of the things that I see is that, yes, was there a hand raised?
Hey, I'm just curious, everything that you guys talk about always involves digital, and yet we're all here together in a physical space when it's being broadcast or being streamed live. Right now, there isn't really a reason for us to be here, other than to, I don't know, shake hands. And yet, very rarely do I hear anyone talk about how important events and experiential marketing and things like that will be in the new media environment. I'm just curious what you guys think about the role of physical events. It's pretty obvious from a music perspective, but in terms of other media, what role do you see physical, actual human interaction playing as part of the broader media mix?
Well, I personally would see the melding of the two. We're moving into augmented reality, right? Where if I'm at a subway station with the right app, I can hold up an iPhone and see which direction I'm headed. Where if I tap my device to yours, we can exchange information. So I would say that we're heading into a world where we're probably going to see the interrelation of the two, the real space and the so-called virtual space moving together. But
yeah, I mean, you see it in the concert space. You could buy your ticket online, which is connected to the artist's website. It could be, as you get to the stadium or the arena, there would be screens. You can buy ringtones. You can get, recording of the show sent to you. There are all sorts of applications where the live and the digital are very closely interacting. I think the web and its direct-to-consumer abilities to us, actually, as a major, coming back to that question, we find a lot of the obstacles and the intermediaries are getting removed between us and the consumer. We used to just go through retail and just go through other media outlets, and we can now, through the artist's website, communicate with the fan base much more effectively and integrate. Go, participate in this contest, and then you go to the show and you can get behind the scenes and shake hands with one of our artists and things like that. So there's that live element is more important, as important or more important than ever, I think. But you can augment it and you can make it into a much richer experience by adding the digital tools and the richness of a much more consistent customer relationship management, as it were, to use that often, CRM word, but it's to create a much more end-to-end solution for consumers.
I think there's a sociology side to this that's worth mentioning. I worry about how my kids communicate, not in a funny way, but just that so much is texting and so much is just narrowly through the machine. Quick sociology study was done. There were couples commuting who were bi-coastal in the United States. They divvied them up into 3 groups. One group could only communicate by email. One group could actually visit on the weekends and talk with one another, and the third group could pick up the phone and call each other anytime. Which group do you think was happiest at the end of the 6-month period? Counterintuitive, it's actually the group that was emailed. Now the interesting sociology question is why? And the sociologists believe it's because they weren't really communicating. None of the real live stuff that gets you in an argument with your spouse ever came through an email. Remember the guys who say 95% of communication is nonverbal? I'm worried about that with the internet. We're already too insular as a society and too into ourselves. And I think it's a great question about events and ways to emotionally tie with other people instead of through a tube.
One of the things we haven't talked about very much is ethics. I personally see a new ethos being brought about by the way media is coming, where journalists are behaving more like marketers, and marketers are behaving more like journalists, where you have companies being influenced by the marketing operations to actually have to change because there's this new transparency. There's a need to be open and say things in a more transparent way, and if you're not, you're called on it. Whether it's a fake blog or something that just seems like a hyped up claim. Are we going to see a lot more of this kind of world where the ethics of the kind of ethics that are important for journalism or that are becoming more important for journalism are also the same kind of ethics that we're going to have to see in commercial media and a kind of crossover and melding the two?
Even now, well, we're seeing issues where people have established reputations online. The FTC is cracking down on bloggers a bit, where people have to be transparent about what they're doing. If they got a product for free, they should mention it. And so in the sense the ethical issues are being addressed so slowly. The biggest issues we have are that there are professional organizations whose sole purpose is to disinform the public. And again, on the opposite hand, then there's magazines like Consumer Reports, which have standards so high that since I'm a member of the board, I'll have to submit myself to a spanking shortly to make sure I have no conflicts of interest. But also Consumer Reports publication, Consumerist, has written an article where they're exposing some of the professional disinformation companies, the actual reporting done by the Center for Media and Democracy. That is, we're going to see one trend towards increased transparency and openness and honesty. Right now, we're also seeing the opposite trend, where the people who are paid to disinform are getting better and better at it.
I would say, right, within our world, which is sort of, it's nonfiction. It runs the range from more serious to lighter. Not really news journalism per se, but I think what you see with us and with other companies in nonfiction is that there is this this money out there to be had in product placements and sort of non-traditional type of ad sales and marketing deals. And it takes a certain amount of real discipline to say, this show needs to be done a certain way. This show is a lighter show and can have that. Because clearly, the more an advertiser is integrated into the program, and it's not just in a separate pod of a 30-second spot, then even subtly, there's potentially an influence on the editorial. And so, you know, we find ourselves, we like to think of ourselves as being very disciplined about it, but undoubtedly in a market where ads get skipped, then when the advertising message can be embedded in the program, it's more valuable. You get more money for it. It's this sort of insidious trend that really, you know, it goes to what Craig's talking about.
Well, there's another issue for you as well in this, which is if companies can go directly to their consumers. I worked on a project for Pepsi where I was hired to create essentially journalistic media around internet links to reach digital influencers. So effectively, that whatever Pepsi spent on the total project, $50,000 or $100,000 to reach these digital influencers, that was Pepsi's channel through various digital and social media that we put together. That was effectively $100,000 that they didn't spend to reach digital influencers through channels like yours. Is this, how are you even, you know, a significant part of your revenue now comes from advertisers who want to reach your audience. Those advertisers can go directly to the consumers and own the audience themselves. Is that going to be a trend where, what you're saying, right? I see where I'm going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's again this issue of sort of on-demand versus bundling, and while we had a pipeline, to Thomas's earlier point, when you have a pipeline that you can restrict, then it gives you a benefit. Broadband has let the pipeline be open, and a lot more people have access to consumers than 20 years ago when you had to go through certain prescribed media channels. That will clearly be an issue for us. We have to continue to find a way to provide value to advertisers. Right now, that may just be an aggregation of audience at particular times that they can't get other places, but that may not be always the case.
All right, are there any other questions from the audience? All right, let me ask you a question, Thomas. You serve, I guess, every month about 1 billion videos on YouTube, something like that?
It's 800 million together with our competitor Universal. We just announced a venture, Vivo.
Vivo, V-E-V-O.
V-E-V-O.
When is that go live, by the way?
It's going to go live before the end of the year.
Okay.
We're going to do that in partnership with YouTube. YouTube obviously is, there's the traffic on YouTube that's music related is much larger than that. This is just the piece of just premium videos, and we're excited about the venture because it's about creating a premium environment for music videos. They're by far one of the most popular sources of entertainment on the internet, and we've seen some of the success in Hulu in creating the premium environment. The good thing is, unlike some of those involved in that venture, we have no channel conflict. We don't actually own a music television network, or we don't have any cable presence. We're just keen to, create an outlet for our premium music videos and create one that is more, more premium than the environment in which they're viewed today. And that's, as a result, we think be very interesting for advertising. We've got tremendous positive response from advertisers because they like the quality of the videos and they like the environment that's being created. And we're very excited about it. I think there's a lot of possibilities.
So it's going to be sort of a Hulu of music videos? Or?
That's one way of describing it. Yeah, it's going to be a clean, premium environment with a .com page that you go visit, and then it's also going to be integrated as a landing page in the current YouTube.
And your hope is that will make money happen?
Advertising. I mean, we used to just give our videos away for free. We hoped they would be begged them to play them, and then we could sell some CDs. And now it's all backwards. We're currently making some money by licensing our music videos to various people. And I think the next generation, which is what Vivo is all about, we actually create the brand around which the music videos are being displayed. That's sort of the next generation music channel using the distribution mechanisms of the internet and mobile, and ultimately, over the top IPTV as well.
So do you think that you're going to pull the video off of YouTube and these other places?
I think the YouTube experience will be completely integrated into the Vivo experience. They'll work together. But I mean, we will license videos individually to people who like to license them, or we will syndicate Vivo players. Sort of pretty much up to the type of commercial relationship that the partner wants. Again, I think it's creating more flexibility and more opportunities. Some people want it this way, other people want it that way. Some people want to just own the environment, control the environment. They come to us and they say, license us your videos, we'll pay you this much, and we say that's fine. Or they say, you know what, we just want to integrate a player, and we say, we'll just put out a Vivo player, and then we'll sell the ads, and we get all the money from the advertising, and they have our content in a syndicated manner. So I think it's, creating more opportunities.
So effectively, is Sony Music transforming, and by implication, any music company, and maybe even any ultimately digital content company? I mean, I know you said that piracy is not a huge issue for you today, but I think we can presume that what is possible in sound ultimately becomes possible in video. And so you can answer this question too. I'm wondering if Sony Music, and as I said, by implication, other companies, go from being a company whose primary purpose is to sell music to a company whose, from a business perspective, from a revenue perspective, primary purpose is to provide music so that other things make money, in this case advertising,
I think that's partly true. I think, again, the business models, there will be multiple business models. Some people just like to own their music, so they pay for it, and they own the file, and they put that on their iPhone. That's why they like it. Other people, just like to, they don't want to pay, they just want it streamed. They're happy to see some commercials around, and that's fine too. I think it's about providing the content for different user experiences that are more appropriate in different circumstances, and creating a level of accessibility to the content across different screens, whether it's a small mobile screen and a PC screen and a TV screen, and different commercial environments. That is the challenge. And it's the challenges for us every day, the challenge of people come to us with new business models, and we have to evaluate how does that stack up against the incumbent model that we've been building. That is one of the challenges. So
I have a question for you because, for example, I looked at Apple video, which is yours, and it has 125 million views in 2 years. As you said, you showed 800 million videos, on YouTube. But even at that level, just back of the envelope math, let's say you have a $1 CPM, or even a $10 CPM, you're making in the single-digit millions on those ads, or less. That's not the kind of revenue stream that supports.
Well, I'm not quite agreeing with you. I think the volume is so large that you just look at the published numbers around Hulu or other numbers that are now in the public domain. Those numbers are 3-digit million time revenue opportunities, and again, it's the volume that makes up for it. We used to get nothing for our music videos. We were grateful for people to play them. Now it's a piece of content we're being paid for. Plus, we're also selling them on iTunes and other places, so there's that, as well. So I think you've got to build your business from the ground up. You've got to replace some of the revenue sources by other revenue sources, and ultimately it's volume.
This flexibility in how you purchase and view video will be true of other media as well. It'll be interesting to see how this works in the print world. I know of a number of larger publishers that are looking at creating a subscription portal so that you can put your premium content into the portal and then go buy it through the portal. So you can imagine all kinds of different approaches. If you're really into fly fishing, you go buy the whole fly fishing bundle, or if you're into serious news, you go access that bundle. So as a metaphor, I think you'll see that happen across different media.
Great. I think the guys have pretty much said it, with maybe one kind of exception, and here I'm speaking as a consumer. Some folks would prefer to get media free, maybe by virtue of watching a commercial or somehow looking at advertising. Some folks may prefer to pay for it to avoid the commercials and all that. But frankly, I'd like to pay for a version of Hulu, which was advertising free. This is all pretty much common sense if we think about our own experiences.
Mark, do you have any thoughts about Discovery to become a place where, rather than achieving your revenue primarily through the content, you have to provide the content and achieve revenue in other ways?
It's hard to imagine that now because I don't think there's any model in which the revenue that's available out of just purely an audience aggregation, eyeball aggregation, can match a subscription model. And I think the trend that you have working against it is that there's just more and more content. Aggregating audiences on broadband is much harder against any particular item. Can you do it in a category and with music? Yes, and that would be what I think you'd have to look at. Could we, using brands and using the volume of content, aggregate audience in a way that you could request a subscription revenue stream? You'd never do it trying to market show by show, even network by network. You have to be able to aggregate eyeballs in some way if you're going to replace a subscription revenue stream.
And I know I'm focusing a lot on digital here. I guess that's the way I'm oriented. But I think of a Craigslist where I'm sorry, Craig, I'm not going to stab you with my pen. I've been worried about it. It's got a blunt end here. I think of a Craigslist which reportedly makes something like $100 million a year in revenue and has about 30 people working there. That's about $3 million per employee. compared to large media companies like what you guys have, where you're maybe in the hundreds of thousands per employee. I'm thinking if I were in your position, leading a company like yours, and I had to support this huge operation, I might wake up sleepless in the middle of the night, wondering where's the Craigslist coming that's going to threaten my model? Where's somebody going to come up with, leverage the properties of digital media, the kind of geometric progressions, the kind of things you can get with digital media, where they have none of the infrastructure to support that you have. I would worry about that.
Yeah. For us, the difference between Craigslist and our model is this issue of content, creating content. In essence, you've got a world of people who are trying to buy and sell things, create your content. You're providing a mechanism for them to do that. No one can create for free the content that we create or a newspaper creates. That can't be done. Now, people may choose not to pay for it. People may choose not to pay for quality content, but there's that type of content is not replicable in the same way that creating an environment for sales is.
There's another analytical framework, if you are doing analysis of what could happen next, that I found enormously helpful. Rather than revenue per employee, I think one of the investment banks calls it a power ratio. It's the percentage of time, the percentage of money that an activity earns divided by the percentage of time as a measure of overall activity. So it'd be the percentage of actual money spent on music divided by the percentage of available free time would add up to 100%. Those statistics are very revealing because when we do that, last time I looked at this seriously was 2-3 years ago, the newspaper ratio was far and away the highest. So you'd expect with greater and greater online digital competition, the competition would aim at the highest ratio. Newspapers were out of balance with the internet on the order of 3 to 1, 2.5 to 1, which says it's a whole pile of revenue in a very modest amount of time. So it's a target. And I think if you're struggling with this, one way to actually break it down into chunks is to look at a business, even within the music business, to look at the different options and the options to earn money within the slices of potential distribution.
And to add to that, your infrastructure and overhead has to provide value. If it doesn't provide value, you've got to change something about it. That's what we've certainly been faced with. We've had tons of redundancies in our businesses. It wouldn't be profitable if we hadn't got rid of so many people. It's very, very hard. It's very painful. Every year we do it. But your scale and your overhead is there to add value for artists, and if it doesn't, then you've got to find a different way of doing things. And I think but as long as you add value, you're a business. And I think that's creative destruction in some ways. I think it's somewhat hampered by the piracy angle, which is a somewhat unfair sort of way in which sort of you're constantly pushed against the wall with the value of the content being zero, because it's sort of so easily tradable across the internet. And I think that we've got to find a way to deal with that. In a developed country like the United States or Europe, where so many jobs depend on adding value based on intellectual property and creativity, we've got to find a solution to that. I'm not sure what that solution is. To me, the prime solution to the piracy problem is to create attractive services that use music, drive consumers there instead of going on LimeWire and stealing it. But we do have to work with ISPs who are now finding that half their networks are being clogged with traffic. There's just sort of films and music being pushed over the network that are being shared and are being stolen. So I think that issue does need to be addressed. We can't just turn a blind eye to it.
You think your margins are going to get squeezed even more? I do
think that the industry is going to contract a bit more, but I do think that ultimately there's a very bright future when I look at developing countries. I mean, whether it's Indonesia, China, Russia, Brazil, there are lots of markets that have been total piracy failures for the music industry over the years. One in a more developed environment in which you create attractive services around music and have to rely on licensing it, as opposed to running factories that just manufacture it in China on masters that you have no control over. you can create models that in those markets are attractive, and likewise in this country. So I continue to be very optimistic.
We've got a couple minutes left, and I want to let you guys talk about what you think the future is even farther out, just kind of blue sky. But Craig, you talked about a business model when we talked before we got on stage of return on social capital as a business model. So it's not return on investment or return on marketing objective or anything like that. It's return on social capital. Do you think that's an important future?
I do feel it's depending on one's individual value system. I mean, sometimes you want to measure your results in both dollars and something less definable in terms of what you're doing with your society. Again, nothing altruistic or pious about this. This just happens to be what works for me personally and what we've stumbled onto for our company. I do think it's an important consideration with other flavors too. Like Google has this don't be evil philosophy, and they're doing a really good job of sticking with it. Just when you do anything in business and our culture, it does have ramifications beyond profit. Just think about it and then see what happens. Again, what we're doing is not altruistic or noble or pious or anything. We're doing what feels right.
So out 5-10 years in the future, if you just completely dream, we're all going to be walking around biochip implants and beam stuff into our dental clinics.
Well, I guess what certainly the technology is unpredictable, and to me, if you look at sort of long trends in technology, clearly, again, this on-demand environment, the ability that people will be able to get what they want, when they want it, where they want it, how they want it, is too compelling to think that that's ever going to stop. And so, look, the companies that will survive through, from traditional businesses to new businesses are ones that can embrace that, they can figure out what consumers want, and find a business model for it. That's sort of what we have
from anywhere, and I can add to it from anywhere. So it's that sort of constant, accessibility of information and entertainment. I think that's going to define a very long time.
I think I'll take your question and deflect it and give you my hope. I think we have just been through a 10-year phase of the world where it was incredibly irresponsibly run. And I really hope that the internet, and you saw little pieces of it in the election last go-around because of the way people were funded. There was a thing on how Obama versus McCain had done that in your video. I would like to see the internet be used as a medium so that people who do know what's right can more effectively voice their opinion. Because there's some big challenges ahead, and I can't see it happening with normal government. I can't see it being addressed.
You talking about social capital?
There's a lot of people addressing that problem right now, and this would be the extremely brief version. The problem is what happens when you have 1 million people trying to discuss a subject at the same time. The White House Open Government Initiative is experimenting with this. And then what happens when you have a few 100 million people trying to discuss the same problem at the same time? I better stop there. I'm also afraid of those songs.
I'm getting a signal. We have to stop here as well. Thank you very much. I hope you, in an hour, got something about the future of media that you can use and take away. And thank you very much.